Hi, this is Kurt Barone, and welcome to another edition of Fire Law Roundup.
Washington, D.C., it's not a similar case, but it's four African-American women firefighters have filed a race and gender discrimination suit. They're seeking $10 million. Why not, right? But this suit, I find, is super interesting because D.C., which again surprises me, but D.C. has an order, as many paid fire departments, Boston, city of Syracuse, right? There's a lot of consent decrees where they have to make the population of the fire department of African Americans the same as that in their city. Did I say that correctly? Basically. So the DC was under a consent decree, and they already had to bring the number of African-American firefighters up to a certain level. That's where I thought we were going in this, but it's not. These are four African-American women firefighters. And just to summarize, they allege that they were denied benefits of being a paramedic and being in certain divisions. They were denied benefits that were available to men. I'm not so sure whether this is a race or a gender issue necessarily. They combine the two of them, and I think there are benefits and negatives of doing that I'll discuss. But basically, they said, look, we got paramedics, but we're not in the EMS division. We were moved over to another division, and we weren't paid the higher rate of being a paramedic. And what they do is very good lawyering, I think. They said, listen, there are four divisions, I think, in DC, and in the EMS division, you get extra pay when you're a paramedic. And this is just one of their claims, but I think it's a big one. And they said, we were assigned to this other division, and we weren't given that extra pay to be a paramedic. Yet we're still assigned to, on overtime, to EMS, et cetera, and we still have to keep up our paramedic if we want that extra pay, but we don't get the extra pay. And what they do, which is very damning, is they say in another area, I think the fire investigation division, I could be wrong on that, but they said in another division, which is not the EMS division, paid paramedics are given their increase, and we are treated differently, not giving that increase. So this is going to switch, right? I think they pretty much made a prima facie case of race and or gender or both discrimination. And what's interesting here is they seem to claim both together, because they said, yeah, look, there are other women who may be not discriminated against, or other African-Americans who are not discriminated against. But when you put the two together, African-American women, we are being discriminated against. Interesting claim. And the way I read it, it kind of takes two of these together in some cases. But what they do, which is damning, is, so when we did this, was it 2 weeks ago? We talked a lot about the burden shifting. So here, I think they've made, based on their allegations, a prima facie case of discrimination, because they pointed then to a similarly situated situation where they were being treated worse than. And the DC will now have to come back and explain why in these two non-EMS divisions, they treat people differently, and justify why these four African-American firefighter women are treated differently in terms of their paramedic pay. There are other allegations. That's the one I really focus on. But again, it's significant. And you have to imagine in DC, which is a very racially harmonious, I think, area. I mean, it's certainly, heavily populated with various minorities, and the fire department's pretty racially integrated now. It
has been the last, couple of decades. Yeah.
Yeah. So I say these, I don't mean to offend anyone. It's tough to imagine that this was intentional, but on the other hand, it's a fire department. It's not tough to imagine anything. But this one I find really interesting because it's not comments, it's practices, right? And practices, I think, are probably easier to defend, but still, it's one of those, hey, you have a history of discriminating against a certain class of people, in this case, a double class, race and gender. So I don't know. I found this very interesting. I think it's going to be very interesting to watch to see whether they can justify their they're just, and I don't mean racial discrimination, but why they treat people in two different divisions with the same certification, why they pay them differently. Was it based on, well, yeah, we don't care whether you're a paramedic when you're in this division, and we want you in the fire investigation unit to be a paramedic? I don't know. Based on how the complaints are in, I have a hard time justifying it, but I'm sure DC has a reason, whether it's a legitimate reason or not, who knows?
Well, you know, I've been putting together the blog that covers, you know, firefighters, even internationally, but mostly in the United States. But I almost think there's a handful of fire departments that could have their own fire law blog just about the lawsuits in their fire department. DC is one of them, FDNY, San Francisco's another one. You know, you could have a firefighter attorney just focus on litigation within one particular fire department. It's amazing, but DC seems to be a hotbed for that. This is just another in a long line of cases out of DC, and the complaint lists several of them. And I've got probably about 100 cases from DC in my database. So there's no shortage of them.
I'm a big fan of surveying your firefighters. You know, you don't have to wait till you receive a complaint about a discriminatory practice. You should, and I'm going to tell you why, you will know, but I'll tell our viewers why I'm suggesting this. So one of the lawsuits that can be under the federal constitution that can be a basis, and is a basis for many of these lawsuits. One of the allegations that you have a history of maintaining this discriminatory practice, right? Mm-hmm. And what they do is they say, I've been here 10 years and this has been going on, and despite complaints, it's never solved, right? And so and they show that the people in charge tolerated or encouraged this, and they were aware of it, and they never did anything to stop this practice. And it's hard to prove, but it's not hard to prove. So the way you stop that very common claim is to survey your members, all of your members, and ask them about, do you think we are discriminatory, retaliatory? Do you think there are any unfair labor practices that we have? And at least bring them to light and investigate them. If you have done that, you will probably break the chain, depending on what you do after, but you probably break the chain of, hey, we turned a blind eye, or we have a policy or an unwritten policy of allowing this, because now you're asking, you're investigating, you're looking to what you could do about it. It's an important factor that stops this. I would be surveying. I wouldn't be, by the way, I wouldn't have, hey, Lieutenant Jones, go make up a survey, right? I'd be spending some real money on these surveys. We could probably put together, it would take hundreds of hours to put together a fair, neutral survey. And right, we talked about creating civil service exams, how hard that is. This is just the same. But that survey would be really critical to taking a deep look into your department to see what complaints people have and what views they have. But at least if you do nothing, you lose, right? You're probably in a lot of trouble. But if it opens your eyes and you can now say, God, I didn't realize our lieutenants were allowing that conversation in the truck to happen, we're going to focus on it. Surveys are critical. Just don't, again, create your own. Have your HR and your lawyer and whatever spend a lot of time creating it, but you got to ask the question, right? How's our environment? And if you do that, you're protecting the department.
Please, if you haven't already, please subscribe. If you like what you hear, please click like as well. We're up to somewhere around 525 subscribers, and our next plateau is 1,000. So please help us out. We want to keep doing this. We need to get up to 1,000. That's the next one. So we appreciate your support. Okay. And